A hotel corridor is a finite, predictable system. It operates on a mathematical logic of standardized, closed boxes arranged in a sequence that the human mind can easily map and navigate. At 1:17 a.m., that predictability was interrupted. A receptionist on the night shift took a call from room 217, where a guest reported a persistent knocking sound. He claimed the noise was originating from deep inside the wall itself. The hotel's floor plans show why this was a structural impossibility. Room 217 sits at the absolute terminal edge of the building. Behind that wall is a zero-clearance zone, nothing but the exterior brick and the open air. There are no maintenance shafts, no pipes, and no adjacent rooms. The anomaly escalated over the next half hour. At 1:27 a.m., the guest reported the knocking was moving closer. By 1:44 a.m., he called a final time, whispering through tears that the intrusion had successfully entered the interior of his room. This sequence of events represents a total collapse of spatial logic. It is a physical paradox, a tangible invasion from a location that mathematically does not exist. When the receptionist breached the door with a master key, the room was empty. The guest's suitcase was still packed, and the bed remained perfectly made, contrasting sharply with the total disappearance of the person who had been calling for help just minutes prior. A rupture in the room's boundary sat behind the bed. The vintage wallpaper had been torn away to reveal a narrow doorway leading to a staircase, descending into darkness that should not have been there. This doorway was a localized tear into an unmapped dimension. Outside, the hotel's brick facade remained perfectly intact, meaning the staircase existed in a space the building's exterior didn't account for. The failure of these rigid structural boundaries allows the unmapped space to pull the room's occupants into its own unregulated, impossible dimension. Authorities moved past the threshold, leaving the finite hotel behind. As they descended, they transitioned from the world of blueprints into the logic of the anomaly. The staircase led to a hallway defying standard geometry. It was a corridor of sequentially numbered doors, 218, 219, 220, stretching endlessly into negative space. The system builds itself through architectural recursion, creating this trap by duplicating existing geometry, exponentially mapping thousands of identical rooms. Inside one of these rooms, the officers found a family sitting at a table. They were perfectly still, their eyes open but unblinking, as if they had been caught in the middle of a motion and then frozen. This lack of movement indicates that the recursive space halts the forward flow of time for anyone caught within its doors. The anomaly functions as a static trap. Subjects within the recursion are held in a state of preservation, effectively removed from the flow of standard spacetime. The missing guest from room 217 suddenly reappeared, sprinting toward the officers from the far end of the hallway. His constant glances over his shoulder and his frantic pace suggest he is being pursued by a systemic force deeper within the hallway. Just before the guest reached the officers, the hallway lights failed. The space entered a 3-second power blackout, a mechanical reset triggered by the approaching collision between the outside observers and the internal system. When the lights returned, the staircase and the corridor were gone. The guest had vanished, leaving the officers standing in front of a solid blank wall of drywall. The anomaly acts as a self-correcting system. It consumes the primary target and then ejects foreign observers, instantly restoring the building's baseline geometry to hide the breach. In the following weeks, the institutional response was one of erasure. The police buried the report, and the hotel management sealed room 217 behind a permanent barrier. Years later, new owners renovated the entire building. They stripped the old wallpaper and remodeled the interior, modernizing the space to make the past disappear. This strategy assumes that a spatial anomaly is a surface-level defect. It treats a tear in physics as something that can be covered up with new materials and a change in management. Human institutions mistake these events for architectural flaws. They try to overwrite the system with drywall, failing to realize that the underlying loop remains intact beneath the surface. The cycle began again when a businessman checked into the unsealed room 217. For the first few hours, the room appeared perfectly normal, but the system's timing is precise. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the front desk phone began to ring, displaying the caller ID for room 217. The receptionist answered to find a terrified void on the other end, repeating the original